Let's move to this now. The most vulnerable people in South Africa will ultimately carry the cost of the economic carnage in Kwazulu-Natal as well as in Gauteng. And this is the view coming from Business Leadership South Africa. Well, it says that people will be affected in one way or the other. For more on this, we're joined by Busi, the CEO of Business Leadership South Africa. And we thank you so much, Ms. Mavuso, for joining us this morning. I mean, as we have this conversation, I'm actually reminded of, a DM that I received on LinkedIn from, a gentleman in Botswana who said, Tumelo, in as much as this also affects South Africans directly, even other countries that have trade relations with South Africa will be impacted. Just paint a picture for us on how dire this situation is right now economically.
Thank you very much for inviting us. So I think this really takes us back as a country. I think we have seen an environment where I think for the past few weeks, Tumelo, we have actually had a few business confidence boosting measures, from an economic perspective view. And we have seen a few positive interventions, that we have actually put in place as a country, from the improvements in vaccination rates and opening up of vaccines to those over 35, to the arrest of Jacob Zuma, which signaled that the rule of law firmly applies in South Africa, to the very positive policy moves of increasing the licensing threshold for own electricity generation to 100 megawatts, to the corporatization of TNPA, as well as the in-principle agreement to sell 51% of South African Airways. So the anarchy of last week, unfortunately, seriously undermines our economic recovery agenda as a country. And South Africa, as a gateway to the African continent business case, has really been beaten out of existence due to last week's events. So we are already struggling as a country to navigate the devastation that has been brought about by COVID, and we are carefully trying to navigate the third wave, and we have seen how government is trying their best to put in place a policy direction that is unnecessarily hostile to business. And we know that the current third wave restrictions came with a permanent closure of about 1,000 restaurants, and that is as per the Restaurant Association. So if you look at the situation, the closure of 1,000 restaurants, the 800 stores that have been looted, the 200 malls that have been destroyed, the 100 malls that have actually been completely banned, or stores that have been completely banned, it really intensifies the unemployment crisis that we have in the country. We're currently sitting at about, I think, 43% unemployment in terms of the expanded definition, where you have more people that are unemployed than those that are employed in all the provinces except Gauteng and the Western Cape. Now, this is going to make sure that this number, definitely escalates. And the people that are actually going to be mostly disadvantaged are those people in those communities. It's going to be the people in Soweto. It's going to be the people the townships in KZN, because those are the people who are employed in the retail industry. So the events of last week, unfortunately, did not help us as a country, and I think it doesn't put us in good light in as far as investor, especially foreign direct investment, is concerned. We know that this is critical for the country, for us to be able to turn our economic trajectory around. So I think this really puts a dampener on things big time, and it further burdens the fiscus, Tumelo.
Of course, and as we have this conversation, we do have, just those images still on our screen, with the army as well as the SAPS confiscating some of, the looted items in a community in Sebokeng. This is an informal settlement. So when you speak about the vulnerable, the unemployed, and how, the events of last week will further exacerbate poverty, it just takes us back to the visuals that we're seeing there. But Ms. Mavuso, if I could just come back, to the point around the strategies that now you have to reimagine as an organization, organizations such as yourselves, to try and sort of like reimagine the economic recovery at this point. What are conversations looking like in boardrooms? If I could be just, a fly on the wall in your boardroom, what are your strategies at this point, given what happened last week?
So fortunately, the conversations are actually very positive. As the business constituency, we had a meeting with the president on Tuesday, and there is commitment all around. Businesses are saying that we are actually ready to rebuild, and we have already started stocking items that have been looted. We are claiming from the insurances. And when you look at it as well, a lot of big businesses don't even need to claim from the insurance. They are saying we're going to go ahead and rebuild, and we'll claim from the insurance later. So that positivity has actually been very encouraging. But then I'm worried about the small businesses, that have actually been affected, that are more than likely not going to be in a position to restart their operations.
Yeah.
And when you look at what the impact of that is going to be on the supply chain, it's actually going to come at a high cost, because these are small businesses that are more than likely employing low-skilled or unskilled laborers. So if they are not going to be in a position to restart their operations, it means that those unskilled or low-skilled people are actually going to have to join the unemployment queues. But the big business fraternity is very committed. We're talking about setting up a fund that is actually going to help these small businesses to actually restart their operations, because we are aware that most of them are actually not going to be insured, or are more than likely not insured. We have actually been working around the clock over the weekend to ensure that we send food parcels to those areas that are currently experiencing food shortages, especially in the rural KZN. So we have really come to the party big time. There are talks about looking at how we rechannel the funds of the Solidarity Fund, to actually assist where there's actually going to be the most need, from a rebuilding perspective. So those conversations are well underway, but it's actually going to take us a long time as a country, to go back to where we were. I don't know if you saw the interview by Mike Nkuna of Masingita Properties, who owns Jabulani Mall and Protea Mall, and he was actually devastated. Was saying, I don't understand this. These are shopping malls that are owned by a black person. So why were they destroyed, and what was the thinking and the rationale behind that? He's also committed to rebuilding, but he's saying it's actually going to take a long time, to restore a Jabulani Mall to its former glory, as it were, and while we are busy rebuilding, it is the people of Jabulani, it is the people of Soweto that are actually going to be mostly impacted. They are the ones today who are sitting without jobs. Right. They are the ones today who are going to have to take 2-3 taxis to just get, the normal supplies that they would have normally got at Jabulani Mall.
All right, we'll leave it there. And thank you so much for talking to us this morning. And I suppose the positivity coming from, businesses to rebuild is a sign in at least a positive direction. CEO of Business Leadership SA, Ms. Busi Mavuso.